was. It's certainly not completely verifiable, but that he was the one who systematically between 1909, maybe as early as 1908 and 1912, turned over the Austro-Hungarian war plans to the Russians. And I say we think because once you track the whole history of the Redl affair through, what you find out is no one ever met with him personally. It was all the whole business was all handled through dead drops, with payments made through the mail and so on. So in part of the historiography that's blossomed since 1991 on intelligence and counterintelligence among the Russians, there's one writer, a gentleman named Mikhail Alexeyev, who spends a great deal of time in a multi-volume work, at least in about 20 pages of a multi-volume work, arguing that we still don't know who Colonel Redl was, or whether Colonel Redl was actually the mythical agent number 25. But if it was Colonel Redl, it amounts to the spy story of the century, maybe minus what you saw in the New York Times yesterday about Dr. Sergeant Comrade Koval and the atom bomb secrets. But anyway, whoever Agent 25 was, systematically for about 3 years fed Russian military intelligence with plans for Austro-Hungarian dispositions in the event of a war against Russia. So essentially, if you look at the materials that I gave you, and I wanted to use it as an opportunity to give you a chance to see what this stuff looks like coming out of the archives. The front, the hand-drawn sketch on the opening of page 2, or on page 2, actually is a hand-drawn sketch that I made on the basis of archival materials that shows the quality of the intelligence read on Austro-Hungarian dispositions in Galicia, and down to core designations, which is a very important part of the story. What you have is the dispositions you can see from left to right: 1st Army, 4th Army, 3rd Army, and 2nd Army. And circumstantial evidence is strong that indeed it probably was Colonel Redl, because he was reassigned, and the flow of this kind of material stops in 1912, and then in 1913 he was uncovered, and in one of those sort of wonderful, how should I say, tragic comedy adventures that you only find in Vienna and maybe to some extent in St. Petersburg, when Redl is uncovered, he is told that they know what he's doing, and that as an officer in the Austro-Hungarian army he should do the only honorable thing, and so they leave him in a room with a revolver, and of course he commits suicide, and this is 1913. And I find that, you know, not that it's not a true story, but I just scratch my head and think that if, you know, I'm not an intelligence type at all, but my first guess would be is if this guy is giving away the store, what you do is you lock him up and pump him for about a year to find out how much of the story is given away before you allow him to blow his brains out. But they didn't do that. Now, so that's the whole story, and if you track the historiography, that's the known part. Redl, question mark, and then out of the archives you can get this, which is indication that somebody, whether it's Redl or whoever Agent 25 was given them good stuff. What's not known, and what I came across in the archives, are reports that occur on a 2-week basis through the Russian Kiev military district, that are minutes of meetings at the highest level of the Austro-Hungarian War Ministry. So there's another agent there, not even the Austrians, but I was at a meeting in Canada earlier this year. I was talking about this, and the Austrian-Hungarians were saying, well, we had an idea, but we didn't know for sure. Well, I said, it's for sure, there's another agent there. And they're now sort of trying to figure out who that was. And stories abound about why Rettel was permitted to commit suicide. You know, one variant says that the Austrians simply wanted to get rid of him because the incident was so embarrassing. They didn't want to give away to the Germans how much of the war plan was given away to the Russians. It was a grave embarrassment. Another part of it is that perhaps pieces of the story track back to members of the imperial family, which would also be another scandal. And of course, like all of those families at that period, there were enough scandals to go around. What's important to know, though, coming out of that is that here the Russians have intelligence dated 1912. Unknown to them, the chief of the Austro-Hungarian General Staff, who comes back on duty after having been in exile for about a year, Conrad von Hetzendorf, comes back to service in 1912, late 1912. He understands that their plans have been blown, so that at the end of 1913, beginning of 1914, he shifts all the disposition